This is the third time I'm trying to make this video. I just can't seem to get it right, but let's hope that the third time's a charm. You see a lot on TV these days. They say the same old trope over and over again. Every commercial, celebrities like to say it, pro athletes like to say it, successful businessmen like to say it. They say, if first you don't succeed, try again. If you fail, you learn from your mistakes, you apply that knowledge, and you come back and you succeed at what you failed at. Can't succeed without failure. Failures are stepping stones to success. It's in all kinds of ads these days. Everyone loves to say it. It's been taken to the nth degree at this point, and you almost can't get away from it these days. And there's some truth to that, but the truth of that is being abused as a propaganda tool. You notice that when they have this message, first you don't succeed, try again, they always sort of use it to refer to an individualistic pursuit. Trying to get that new job. Trying to get that raise. Trying to, make your football team. Even trying to, get a girl to like you. It's always with the idea of some selfish pursuit, getting yourself ahead. And a lot of times they'll even talk about how, everyone's out there trying to get you, but, if you fail, you can't give up. You keep trying. You keep trying to beat everyone else. It's very self-congratulatory because a lot of people putting out this message are people that really believe that they've failed and then tried again and came to a place of success. But, in the end, all this really turns out to be is capitalist propaganda, really. They're using a true message, which is that, yes, you do have to fail in order to learn and succeed. But they're only applying it to situations that involve individual pursuits and not to situations that involve communal pursuits. And what I mean by that specifically is communism. Capitalists say, the same people that are, paying for these commercials to be made, say that communism has been tried and it failed. It's over. Forget about it. Why push a failed ideology? That's what they always like to say. Now, what about all this, I thought you just, I thought capitalists were just saying, in all these commercials and ads that you have to fail in order to succeed. So why does communism not get the same consideration? Why aren't they interested in seeing a repeated attempt at a communal philosophy achieve success? And not only do they claim that it'll never be successful, but from the beginning they've actively tried to prevent it from becoming successful. Communism. You probably heard fear of a good example. That's what was going on with the Vietnam War. What are they afraid of? The domino theory. That if Vietnam became communist, that other countries would become communist also. That they would go from place to place and every place would become communist. Now, if it's such a failed ideology, if it has no chance of success, then why would capitalists actively fight against its proliferation? Why would they start a war and kill thousands and thousands of U.S. soldiers to prevent its spread? That seems a little fishy, doesn't it? And I'll tell you why. Because, obviously, communism more successful, it threatens the monetary holdings of capitalists. They're not going to be cool with an attempt to to make communism work, because it'll mean that their beloved system, the one that makes them rulers and everyone else their servants, will be proven to be not the best way. Now, before I continue, I should say I'm not really a communist. I like the idea of communism, and certainly if it could be made to work, I would be willing to do my part, I believe. It's asking a lot of people. Communism is, requiring people to live for the communal rather than for the individual. And there's a certain lack of freedom, Communism needs you to be an engineer, and you want to be an actor. Well, tough cookies. You're going to be the whatever the system needs. Now, that was at least the idea of communism anyway. Communism has an authoritarian streak in it. If you don't go along with the party line, then they kill you a lot of the time, at least in previous versions of communism. Maybe communism that went back to the drawing board wouldn't resort to violence to, get its way. Maybe it wouldn't need to be so authoritarian. Maybe it wouldn't need to kill people off. Maybe it could find other ways to deal with people. I don't know. But communism is never going to get that chance. And that's why, capitalists don't want to give communists a chance. They'll say, a lot of people died. Well, who is to say a lot of people aren't going to die at the hands of capitalism? If climate change goes out of control, I can guarantee you that billions and billions of people, maybe the entire species, and not only all of humanity, but many, many species of plants and animal will also die. So now capitalists assume that, that hasn't happened yet, so capitalism is working. Well, that's a very nice short-term position on things. Capitalism works real well in the short term. We'll see how well it works in the long term. Remember that capitalism is a philosophy based around infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. I've mentioned this before, and there's no doubt it could potentially lead to certain doom unless major adjustments are made. Now, you could have something. I'm not even sure that pure communism is possible, because it does require an ultimate selflessness of all of its constituents. And, there is some question about whether humanity is capable of that. I think it's a much more enlightened goal than capitalism's goal, which is just to have the end of self-enrichment on an individual level. But to me, I think socialism is a good compromise. Things like you see in the Scandinavian countries, France, high taxes, lots of public services, a social safety net, free health care, making sure that the weakest among us still have a chance to get on their feet and to make the most of their lives and their talents. And meanwhile, there's a lot more freedom, obviously, in those economies than there is in communism, or at least the examples of communism we've seen. No one's getting murdered for not believing in the party line in socialist countries, at least not the ones in Europe, or in countries where they're taxing the population at 50%. If you don't like it, you can move out of the country, So, I'm more of a democratic socialist myself, I guess. I suppose, the idea is to allow free enterprise to continue to exist, even with the high taxes. And, maybe there's more innovation with free enterprise than there would be in a purely government-run economy. I'm still a little on the fence about whether or not you can have a sustainable technological society. We've remade the world to suit our own ends. And, there's a good possibility that even that is asking too much of the world, too much of nature. Because, it's not really living in balance when we die as old as we die. It's not really living in balance when there's a sixth mass extinction going on because of the amount that we've spread over the globe. We're taking up a lot of the resources that would otherwise have been used by the plants and the animals on the planet. And maybe we could improve on that. We could limit our footprint, live vertically rather than horizontally. Find a way to use resources that are renewable rather than ones that we deplete. But I'm not even convinced of that, I'm not sure. Some people say you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I think we could if we really wanted to. If we had an aggressive population control measures and got the population down to 1 billion people, we could go back to living like the tribes did long ago. And it would probably be more in balance with nature. But, most of us are not prepared to live in that environment. We were raised in a world where we had all the modern conveniences and comforts that we've become accustomed to. So I tend to push for the sustainable technology model, but let me just mention on a side note that I do wonder whether or not that's foolish in itself, and whether or not we need to return to something like the tribal living that existed before we even had cities and governments, city-states, countries, all that. But anyway, one last thing about that, as I said, with capitalism now, we have sixth great mass extinction happening, climate change barreling potentially out of control. We've already passed the point where we can return to the return to the climate that we had the last the sort of the waxing and waning ice age climates that we've had that have been pretty suitable for humanity. What do they call that? I wish I remember the name of that. We have future energy concerns. As I mentioned before, there is a limited supply of fossil fuels, and we're not ramping up alternative energy production fast enough to replace it in a timely manner when we get to the point that it becomes harder to extract, more expensive to extract. So, I think the nice thing about communism, potentially, or socialism, is that it can limit that kind of expansion. There's that sort of central planning mechanism where, profit doesn't become the primary motivator. You start looking at things like, you could be implementing an aggressive alternative energy program now instead of letting it happen automatically. And by the time it occurs, it might be too little, too late. If we could reroute the money that we're spending on national defense, and or not all of it, but a large percentage of the money we're spending on national defense and on subsidies to fossil fuel companies that are creating a environmental crisis, then we could move in a better direction. Instead of mortgaging the future for profit now. But that's not capitalism's interest. And I believe that communism and or socialism, more socialism, but potentially communism, if we ever figured that out in the long run, would have us be more prepared for those dangers. And, not only does capitalism not want communism to fail and learn from its mistakes and try again with new ideas, or communist leaders, I should say. They don't want to. Not only do they not want to give communist leaders the opportunity to learn from their past mistakes, or from the past mistakes of previous leaders, but they actively try to prevent it from succeeding. And there's a lot of reasons why communism failed in the past, or the attempts at communism failed in the past. They were trying to make in China. They were trying to make a great leap forward from an agrarian society to a technological society, and that is not how communism is supposed to occur, or is theorized to be possible to occur. The theory was that you'd only have communism be successful in a world where it was already a developed economy. That workers would take control of the machinery used to produce everything and use it to create an equitable sharing of resources. And China did not have that situation in place. And other countries that tried it, like Cuba, they didn't have a great resource base to work from. There's not a lot of resources in Cuba to keep communism going. And not only that, but capitalist countries wouldn't even work economically with communist countries. They wouldn't trade with them. They put on trade embargoes, sanctions. They actively did everything they could in their power, capitalist countries, to make sure that communist countries suffered for even attempting to try communism. So not only are they not okay with communism trying and trying again, but they didn't even give them the chance to attempt to be successful right off the bat. And, on top of that, they, in the Cold War, they built up a massive nuclear arsenal in order to scare the communists out of their ideology, or to threaten them with violence if they didn't stop doing what they were doing. And the communists ended up spending a lot of money on nukes and artillery and preparing to deal with the threat of capitalist countries who didn't want to see them succeed. And that further degraded their potential to spend their money in a way that benefited the vast majority of their populace, as opposed to just preparing them for survival in the face of hostile capitalist forces. I mean, I say these things based on what I've heard. I can't say I've read a lot about it, and I should be reading more about it before I probably speak about it. This is all basically just coming from intuition. Most of these videos do. And yes, communists were authoritarian and killed people, and I do wonder whether or not that's a built-in feature of communism. I'd certainly like to see an attempt at communism that wasn't so authoritarian, it wasn't so violent, it didn't just automatically kill the people who disagreed. I certainly think that if they had banished them outside of the country, that would have been a much more reasonable way to go about it. But communism will not get that chance to try again, because capitalists are adamant that they not get another opportunity to even attempt to exist. So, to wrap up, this is still not the greatest version of this, but I think I might post this one because this is a complex issue and it's not easy for me to speak about it knowledgeably. But basically, the bottom line is, when you see these ads saying, try again, never fail, just remember that they're not saying this because they care about you and they want to see you succeed. They're saying this because they're selling a product and an ideology. And the ideology is one of hyper-individualism. Get up and try again as long as it's just you that's trying. If as a society you want to get up and try again, well, you threaten my my own accrued resources. You threaten my power. So I'm not so cool with that. So it's really just they're just trying to further a propaganda, or further the concept of hyper-individualism using a message of propaganda that makes it seem as if they care about your personal success. But The reality is they don't care about you at all. They want you to work hard for them. That's why they want you to work hard. They want you to work hard to be an athlete so you can help them sell Coca-Cola and the military and cars and beer and such and such. Not because they want to see you succeed. And it's just two-faced. And they should, how can you believe a thing they say if they won't allow communism a chance to learn from its mistakes and try again?